Hello and welcome to this video on the circle of Willis. So let's start by addressing the three most basic questions that we usually do. What, where and why. Now what is the circle of Willis? It's an anastomosis, a circulatory anastomosis, which is named after the physician Thomas Willis who discovered it. And it connects the anterior and posterior circulation of the brain. Now the anterior circulation of the brain is by the bilateral internal carotid arteries, and the posterior circulation is by the bilateral vertebral arteries. Now where is it located? The circle of Willis is located at the inferior surface of brain, or the base of the brain, and in the interpeduncular cistern of the subarachnoid space. Now this is a cross section of the brain, and here you can see this is the cross section. The pink dots represent the pathway for the CSF. It's an incomplete image, but just to show you where the interpeduncular cistern is. So the CSF flows through this, and here this deep shaded area is the interpeduncular cistern in the subarachnoid space. This is where the circle of Willis lies. So why do we need the circle of Willis? What purpose does it serve? So as I mentioned before, it's an anastomosis. What do anastomoses do? They are a connection. So say this is an anastomosis. This is vessel 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this area is being supplied by 5 vessels. Now supposing there's a block in vessel 1. Blood will reach this area through 2, 3, 4 and through 5. Or if there's a block in 2 or 3 or 4, still the blood is going to come here through 5. For the blood to be stopped, all of these vessels have to be blocked. So the anastomosis provides a collateral blood flow. It protects that area from ischemia, the same purpose that the circle of Willis serves in the brain. And some research shows that it has evolutionary importance. Another reason is it's a passive pressure dissipating system. Now what does a passive pressure dissipating system mean? For example, if this is the circle of Willis, or any anastomosis for that matter, say vessels 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 are supplying this area, and this is the anastomosis or the circle of Willis, whichever. Now these arteries are providing blood. The blood comes in pulses. We know that arteries supply blood in pulsations, and they are not synchronous, meaning they supply blood every time there's a pulse, but that does not happen at the same time in all of these vessels. Say this just push blood here, but the second vessel might take a longer time to push blood. The third vessel may have already finished pushing blood by the time it reached from 1. You get the picture. So the blood comes in waves, and it does not come at all the same time all together. So this will create a pressure gradient. Why? Because it's coming in at different times. So there will be a part of the circle or the anastomosis which will have a high pressure, and the area which might be low. This does not mean that this is how it looks. This is not the high pressure area and the low pressure area. This is just an example. So there's an area with a high pressure of blood, there's an area with a low pressure of blood. This anastomosis dissipates that pressure. It ensures that blood from the high pressure area reaches the low pressure area. So it dissipates the pressure. So the pressure is extremely high here and it's extremely low here. And this pressure is dissipated equally. So it's a passive pressure dissipating system. Now when we say the circle of Willis, the picture that comes to your mind is a red color diagram with so many vessels, you don't know which is from which. So I'm going to make it a little different. The pink is for vertebral artery. Now I mentioned before, vertebral artery and its branches, they supply the posterior circulation. And green here is going to be for the internal carotid artery, which supplies the anterior circulation. So you will be able to differentiate at the end of the diagram how the circle of Willis joins these two circulations together. Now we'll start with the vertebral artery. So we have vertebral arteries on both the sides. Vertebral arteries together form the basilar artery. This is the basilar artery. And before this, these two vertebral arteries also join here and they form the anterior spinal artery. Okay, now the basilar artery gives out some branches. Here it gives out the anterior inferior cerebellar artery. I will give you a clearer diagram after this, so I'm just labeling them using abbreviations. The basilar artery also gives out pontine branches. These branches go to the pons. So the vertebral arteries came together, they form the basilar artery. Here we have the anterior spinal artery. The basilar artery gives out an anterior inferior cerebellar artery and the pontine branches here. Now as it goes up, it gives out two more branches. This is the superior cerebellar artery. We saw an anterior inferior cerebellar artery here. This is a superior cerebellar artery. And this here is the posterior cerebral artery. Okay, don't get confused. These are cerebellar arteries. This is the posterior cerebral artery. Okay, next we have the posterior communicating artery. Now remember, I'm drawing this in green because it's a branch of the internal carotid artery. So now this is coming from the internal carotid artery. Right, so this is the internal carotid artery. A branch of the internal carotid artery is the middle cerebral artery. And this here is the posterior communicating artery. Now the internal carotid also gives out an ophthalmic artery, an anterior choroidal artery. The anterior cerebral arteries. Now we've seen posterior cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery. Now we have something called an anterior cerebral artery. Again, a branch of internal carotid artery. And the anterior cerebral artery gives rise to the anterior communicating artery. So this is your circle of Willis. So now you can see the pink, like I said, these are all coming from the vertebral arteries. This is what forms your posterior circulation. This is a part of the posterior circulation. The green part is coming from the internal carotid artery, forming the anterior circulation. And circle of Willis joins or connects these two circulations together. And it's also a pressure dissipating system. So that is what the circle of Willis is for. I will attach a picture of the circle of Willis at the end of this video as I speak, so that you can take a better look at the branches and the names. Thank you for watching this video. And if you liked it, please do like and comment on the video. Do leave me suggestions so that I can make better videos and cater to what you want to watch. Thank you.